How's everyone doing? Hello, hello, wonderful, beautiful people. How's everyone doing? Oh my goodness, when you talk about interruptions and delays, that has been what I have been experiencing. Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, blessings to everybody. Listen, TGIF for sure. TGIF for sure. I hope that you guys can hear me well. I'm glad to see you here in the chat. I'm glad to see you here up in the balcony, the bleachers, or you may be in an expensive seat, which I call the orchestra seats, where you pay extra money, right? So I hope that you hit that like button coming in. I'm happy to be here. I have early morning voice because it is still really early here on the West Coast, but I am here. I am here. Had a lot of warfare. Forgive me for changing the time a couple of times this morning, and the dog was barking because they were picking up the garbage outside. Um, it was a lot going on. That's all I can tell you. And then it didn't change from East Coast time to California time. And so it was just a lot going on, but I did not get defeated and discouraged in it. And I am just happy to be here. As you can see, all of you, that I am not in my studio, right? I am not in New York City. I am in California right now. And so I had to keep coming back, right? No matter where I am, I have to find a way to get back on to chat with you because I love you guys so much. And I really wanted to talk about this topic and understand that this cannot be talked about or shared in one live. It's a very, 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 very serious topic, and it is something that is ongoing and is different layers to triggers. If you saw the thumbnail read triggers. Do we all have them? And I wanted to share last week, for maybe a couple of weeks now, I've been thinking about a few things, and then I experienced something that triggered me, and it was like out of the clear blue. And then I said, you know what? I sat with myself as I often do, and I said, how many triggers do you experience? How many events have you experienced that causes emotional triggers uh, in you? I was talking to myself, and I had to stop, pause, and reflect and think on some things and think about some of the things that I had gone through, but some of the things I've worked on. But this particular trigger that happened to me last week, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was in a car driving, and I wasn't driving, I was the passenger. And I was in my native place where I was born and raised, which is Harlem, New York City. And as we're driving, a car just was turning the wrong way. It was turning the wrong way. It was trying to come from a right side parking space and shoot across the traffic, like come shoot across the in front of us. So the person I was with, I was like, whoa, like that. And she kind of stopped, but there was a biker on the left uh, driving his bike. He was a delivery guy, and he couldn't stop. And so, because this car, this van, I should say, was wrongly coming across the road, to just could have just went down the block and made a U-turn, but no, people risk people's lives daily. And because this biker could not stop, he ran straight into the van and flew up in the air, and right in front of my face just came right down on the ground. And I kind of just, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, oh my God. And immediately that triggered me when the day I was walking across a street and a car decided to run the light and ran into me, and I kind of flew up, and thank God, I don't know, it felt like an angel pushed me forward because I should have flew backwards. And I felt myself go, but then I dropped to the ground right in front of his wheels, right in front of the car that hit me. And the person that hit me had no compassion and decided to just stand over me and watch me screaming in pain. And I know I just kept screaming, my leg, my leg. And many people were screaming at him, how could you not see her? She's the only person here crossing the street. And instead of him taking ownership, he stood in the crowd. He stood in the crowd and watched me on the ground. So um, I couldn't move. I realized that I felt the impact of the car like I was going to go up in the air. But like I said, I felt something. I went forward, bang, 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 and hit the ground in front of in front of his car. And he was a coward. He never said, lady, miss, are you okay? I'm so sorry. He stood as if he was a bystander and didn't take recognition and didn't say, I'm sorry. In the meantime, the Lord sent this beautiful girl. Her name was Nicole, like my oldest daughter, and she bowed. She came down, near me, and began to just comfort me. And I happened to be on the phone crossing the street talking to my middle daughter, Coco Pache, and it was just a traumatic experience. And so a week ago, when I'm in this car, right, and I've been in car accidents. I was on the turnpike one day, and the tire busted, and the car was spinning around. And anybody that knows about the New Jersey Turnpike, you know about oncoming traffic. And the car was spinning, 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 spinning. And all of a sudden, whoof, the car went on the shoulder and just stopped. Again, a hand of God on my life, but again, an event, a trigger. So cars and myself, I work hard to stay calm and realize I'm good, because that's what we have to do with triggers. We have to speak and compose ourselves when the event comes or something we see or happens triggers us. And so a week ago, when we were coming down this block in Harlem, and the guy decided to come across the traffic instead of going down and making a turn to go into the block he was trying to get in. We were able to just abruptly hit the brake and stop. But this biker that was coming down the left side of us ran smack into the van. I mean, smack into the van. And he went up in the air and he hit the ground. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And immediately that triggered. It took me back to that day that I got hit by the car that ran the light and crushed my leg, my tibia, which today I still suffer with, right? 3 surgeries later, they couldn't save a lot of it. So they said you have to have a total knee replacement after operation 3. So there are things in life that can you wake up with your normal day that can abruptly change your life traumatically, and that's what happened to me. And I mean, just my life has not been the same in terms of my movement and what I can do and how fast I can go. And I'm not on a cane anymore. I'm not in a wheelchair anymore. I'm not on crutches anymore. Nevertheless, the trauma of what happened to not just me emotionally and mentally, but to my physical, right? So when I saw this young guy get run smack into this van because the van was making an illegal turn, all I could do was say, oh my God. And my friend that was driving, she panicked more than me. You know, some of us can handle certain things, differently. And so she was like, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go. And for me, I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of the car and go to him and to see if he was okay. But she sped off and I was uneasy with it. She's like, oh my God, I can't watch it. I can't watch it. I said, but we pulled off. She said, you want to go back? Yeah, I want to go back. I want to go back. I said, he needs someone. So we come back around, and it just so happened that the brother that was hit was a brother that could not speak a lot of English. he had most recently come from Africa, and he was learning English. He knew a little English, and he was actually delivering some food. I don't know if it was Uber Eats or DoorDash or something. I saw he had a bag like he was delivering something. So when we came back around to this gentleman, I jumped out the car and I said, "Pull over." I jumped out. By this time, at first I couldn't find him. I said, "Where did he go?" So I didn't see the van. I expected to see the van there, him there, and police. Well, the van was gone, and he was stuck there just standing there looking like what happened. His bike was totaled. And so I ran across to him. By this time, a gentleman who spoke his language was talking to him. I said, "I saw it. I came to give you my information because I would love to, be a witness to say that I saw what he did." I wish someone, and I all kept thinking about me, how this young girl, when the car hit me, she laid right there on that ground with me. She said, "I got you. I got you. I'm not going to let nobody touch you." And I was screaming and screaming and screaming, "My leg, my leg, my leg." And so she said, "I'm not going to let them move you. I'm going to wait till the cops come. We're going to get information." So she was there to help me. And this is what I say when we have to be selfless, when to a stranger, to someone you don't know. They are people that we don't know, that the Lord or you will be put in a certain situation or circumstance to make a choice to either help the person or to keep going about your daily day. And for me, because there was a trigger that triggered it took me right back to that place and that space where that man ran the light and hit me. And not only did he do that, he stood in the crowd and would not even say, "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" He was a coward, right? And people were yelling at him. So I'm there with this guy and I'm saying, "Oh, you can't speak English." I said, "Where did he go? Where did he go?" And the guy is talking in in the language, African language. And I was like, I said, "I saw it. I saw it." I said, "Is your bike total? Are you okay? Let's call 911. You want to go to the hospital? You're going to be really messed up tomorrow. You went up in the air and hit the ground." And he's like, "No, no." I said, "No, you must go to the hospital." Then it dawned on me that, excuse me, maybe there was something he couldn't do in terms of exposing who he was. Because, there are a lot of people who don't have papers and all of those things. So I had to really think, excuse me, in real time on my feet. So the guy is yelling at him and yelling at him. And I'm like, "Where did the guy go who hit you?" The car. So he says, so I told my friend, I said, "Let's ride down this block." I'm a Harlemite. So listen. So we rode down the block and I said, "That's the car right there." I said, "Don't stop, right? Don't stop. Don't stop. Ride up a little bit." And she said, "That's the van." So we saw the van was dented really bad, but he had pulled into park in this block. So now I have to think of, what do I do? In the meantime, I'm still upset going through the trigger of what I just saw, and it reflected that event that happened to me. And I said, "Okay, so I'm street smart, right? I'm street smart." So I knew I couldn't really confront the guy because I didn't know how he would respond to me. I didn't know who he was. So I knew better than to just approach. So I said, "Can you back up and get the plate?" But she couldn't move like I would have been moving if I was driving. So I said, so we backed up, but we couldn't get the plate. I said, "Go back around the block." We went back around the block to tell the guy and his friend, "The van is right there. Park. Look down the block. It's right there. Go down there and get his information." So I had to remove myself out of it so that I didn't cause harm to myself, right? Because listen, like I said, I'm street smart, right? And so although I'm saved and everything, God doesn't erase, your intelligence on how to handle things, right? He doesn't just wash all that away. I beg to differ with folk, right? Because every experience in your life can help you in your future, right? If you look at it in that way. And so he said he's there. I said, "Yes." So anyway, the guy went and I left because by this time the cops weren't there. He wasn't really cooperating. I think he had a little fear. And I said, we had a card with our information. And so when that happened, when I got home, I started to think about triggers. I started to think about, how many triggers do you have, Sheila? How many traumatic events have happened to you in your lifetime that at any moment something can happen and bring it back up again? And how do you deal with it. How much power have I given to it, and how much time has I given to it to work on it, to minimize it when things happen, because it just happens. You don't know when it's going to happen, but working on yourself and the things that you've gone through in your life helps you to be able to deal with life as life is happening in real time, such as what happened that day. And and I realized, like, wow, when seeing him get hit, I mean, I went back to that morning so fast in my mind and my emotions and everything. And so I said, well, do all of us experience triggers? Do we all have triggers? There are so many different layers of triggers and trauma, right? I want to talk about this a little bit today, but I also want to come back and share more about trauma bonding. I want to talk about how chronic trauma can make a person controlling. I want to talk about signs of how trauma has affected your self worth. These are some of the things that we don't think about a lot until it shows up at our door. And so I made some notes and I looked up a couple of things, and I just wanted to share with you. And I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about some of the things that might have caused you uh, a traumatic event. Many of us walk around with PTSD, right? Post traumatic stress disorder. They have kind of altered that in the DMS-5 book. They have kind of altered those that title or those words. But anyway, the PTSD, many of us have, and I know many people who have this and didn't even realize and recognize that that is what was haunting them and dealing with them. That's why it's always good to check in with yourself, and to trust someone else to check in with you, right? So 70% of adults in the US have experienced some type of traumatic event, right? At least once in their lives. 70%. That's a big number. That's 223.4 million people. So more than 33% of youth is exposed to community violence, right? That will be uh, privy to community violence and will experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's a severe reaction to traumatic events. And so I thought about that. I thought about people. I thought about us. I thought about all of us just living our daily lives, and none of us really knowing the depth and the deepness of what each one of us individually has gone through. Many of us have family members that have gone through deep, deep events, and we don't have a clue about it because they've either not spoken about it, you weren't witness to it, or they're hiding it, covering it up, ashamed of it. There's so many different layers to us, to people, no matter how old you are. When you think about how many women and men have been molested or gone through some traumatic experience at a young age and kept it a secret. When you think about parents who know their children are in that position, and because they don't want to lose their boyfriend or husband or whatever, they sweep it under the rug and say you'll be all right, and they rather choose the man or the woman instead of their child. There's so many scenarios, and so many scenarios that people keep quiet and silent about. I started thinking about triggers. And as I was sitting with myself, I was like, wow, I started thinking about my husband, the love of my life, right? Who was murdered the same day that my daughter was born. Okay, so here's another traumatic event. I thought about for years how years I had not dealt with that. When I would hear a gunshot, when I would watch a program and there would be guns and shooting and killing, I'd be triggered. I'd be triggered. And I didn't know at the time, what exactly I was dealing with, but I just knew that the event of my husband, right? I had been married 4 months and I had been with him around 3 years. I was young. He was a great man. And he was on his way back to the hospital to see me because I had had an emergency C-section. And so on that day, every time January 13 rolls around, that's a double emotion that I go through. And some of you know I'm a social media girl, Facebook. Of course, you know that this is my life, being a public person, a singer, this, that, and the other. I'm on social media. And so I'm always posting things on my Facebook page, IG, different things. You guys that follow me know. And I on that day, January 13th, I can feel myself in my innermost being. The it's not turmoil anymore, but it's an awareness, it's an awakening on the inside of that day. Something significant happened where my precious baby girl was born, but her father was murdered the same day. Right. Thank God he had got back to the hospital. Was there at the hospital when I had her, but back then they would make you go in recovery and no one could wait around. So they told him, just go home, take a shower, you can come back. It was on his way back that the incident happened. So the next time I saw him was in a casket, right, at a funeral. And so they didn't want to release me out the hospital because back then C-sections I was very sick. It was a traumatic pregnancy, as were my other two. I just have traumatic pregnancies. And they wouldn't allow me to come out of the hospital. So they kept me around 12 days because they knew, everyone knew, every doctor, the hospital knew what had happened. And they were trying to, keep me calm so that those stitches wouldn't burst and I wouldn't get so excited. And so on January 13th, as we talk about triggers and events that cause trauma to your life, that was a day and is a day. And every year I measure where I'm at in my innermost being, where I am. Most times I won't talk about it to anyone because, again, it's the day of my daughter's birthday. So I have to minimize what I feel or what I want to say in order to highlight her birthday. So on that day, I never post him on January 13th. I post on his birthday, which was August 29th. I did post and said happy birthday in heaven, but on that day, I have to make a decision for the better good to really think and put my daughter first. So I don't ever put Wayne up. His name is Wayne. I never put Wayne up and honor him on that day on social media, saying, this is the day my husband was murdered. This is the day my daughter was born, the same day. I try to minimize that. I don't talk to her about it. I don't share about it. People, sometimes they never, well, many don't say much to me. I guess they don't know where I am emotionally. So it's really on that day, in that trigger and in that traumatic event that I went through that rolls around every year, January 13th, I'm going through something emotionally alone, right? And I thank God for his anchor in me and for the peace of God that rules within me, because it's his peace that brings me resolve. And I want you all to get a resolve in anything that tries to haunt you, anything that tries to stick its little head up to cause you to be off of your game. I want you to recognize the things that you need to work on or deal with, and recognize if there's a trigger going on, that to identify it so you can crucify it, right? So you can work on it. Don't let it dominate your life. Don't let it control your space. And so it's difficult to deal with this. It's difficult to work on these traumatic experiences and these events that you have gone through in your life. But there's a working process, right, that we can all go through as much as we can. As much as we can. I'm not saying that event will disappear. I'm not saying that, it's just going to snap and be gone. I'm just saying being conscious of where you are in yourself, being conscious of what it is that's haunting you or trying to cause you to not be the best that you can be for yourself will help you get to that place called there. And we're all going to a place called there. I want to say hello to all of you once again, those of you who have joined me in the chat, those of you who are in the bleachers, the balcony, or in the orchestra seat. I want to say hello. I want to say hello to all of you. I'm going to look at some of these comments in a moment, because this topic, that's why I said, has everybody dealt with something like this? So for me, I sat once that car, when I was in last week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and when the car just The guy ran into the car on his bike, not because of his fault, because of the van, and he flew up in the air. I went, the trigger just messed me up. It just messed me up. And that caused me, when I got home, to think about, Sheila, like, how many things have events have you I want to say mastered, have gone through and survived to be in your right mind and sane enough to be able to share and talk and to go on with your life purpose or whatever your goal is, right? Because getting to the place called there is where I'm trying to get to, and your there is your there, right? And that there is the movement of your life and the movement of moving towards that goal, and doing the things that you're called to do and doing the things that you love to do, without these things speaking to you to cause you to back up or have a drawback spirit, draw back and begin to rewind your steps. And so when January 13, when I sat and I was like, okay, that's a little trigger, that's a little trigger. But through the years, I look at my daughter, right? So here's the positive trigger from the negative trigger. I sidebar my mind to see that my daughter, I had a beautiful baby girl on this day. So when the sadness of the trigger tries to speak, I think about Coco. I think about Coco, the joy of Coco. And this whole scenario of a trauma, it spills over into her life, because in school growing up, she thought, oh my God, if my mom hadn't had me that day, my dad would be alive. So look at how these things spin out of control, and it went to the next generation for her to think it was her fault that her father was killed, right? It was her fault that day that she was going to be born. So she had to work through her trauma of knowing that it was every year her birthday. I don't know what silently she thinks about, that her dad was murdered the day she was born, right? She told me some things about in school when girls and boys were making Father's Day cards and celebrating their fathers. She would sit there as a young girl. I can't imagine what she felt like as a young girl in school. So triggers and things, that events that happen to us in life, can sometimes spill over into our family and other people that are close to us. And so I thought it was important to come on and to talk about it. I have no issue and no problem talking about me. I have no problem talking about me, because I've worked on me. I don't ignore what I'm going through in my life. I don't ignore when I feel a certain way about something that has happened or that I see. I always ask people in my sessions, when they say they're so broken, I ask them, you know, what is what's the issue? What's the problem? And they're like so broken that they can't speak. And sometimes I'll just say, search for one word. Let's search for one word to identify where you are right this moment. Just dig deep and give me one word. Just let's get to a one word. Once they don't have to think about a sentence, once they don't have to think about a whole storyline, they can search for one word. They can say brokenness. They can say sad. They can say depressed. And then we can build on that. And then eventually we unravel and unravel for that moment, right? Because you can't do too much too soon when you're trying to help them get to their place called there, when you're trying to help them heal, right? And so triggers are something that we all have experienced. As I said, 70% of adults in the US have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once, and in their lives, that there's like 223.4 million people that have dealt with this, and more than 33% of our youth in certain communities are exposed to violence and certain things that will attach itself to their lives, right? So this affects everyone. This really affects so many people. So I want to talk a little bit about understanding fight, flight, freeze, and the fawn response. Fight, flight, freeze, and the fawn, FAWN response. Again, this cannot be talked about or shared in one live. I want to continue to talk about this and unravel so many dynamics of traumas, narcissistic uh, relationships, and how the trauma has caused the narcissistic behavior to become a controlling person, rather the trauma itself, how chronic trauma can create this narcissistic controlling things, and signs of how trauma can affect our self-worth. So I know that we all have been raised and reared in different parts of the world and have been exposed to different parts of the world, but yet people are people wherever we go. And as I've traveled the world and shared and talked with people in other countries, whether it be Africa or Barbados or Bahamas or Curacao or Montserrat, all the different places that I've traveled and talked to so many different people, even though they speak another language, they have dealt with triggers and trauma, especially because of different culture diversity, right? So even culture diversity brings a different type of events to our lives. And so I felt it necessary to talk about this, being that I've had some events in my life that can trigger, excuse me, that causes triggers even at the age that I am now. The thing is that I had to learn how to work through them. I had to work to identify them so that I could crucify them. And so this is why we're talking today about triggers. Do we all have triggers? And they can be so sullen, and they can be so like out there in your face. So I just regret the fact that I couldn't help that young man that actually caused me to want to talk about this uh, today. The one that I saw got hit on the bike and flew up in the air, and it caused me not to ignore what it did. Like I said, things happen. You wake up, you don't know if something's going to do, you could watch a program and be triggered, right? There are good triggers, negative triggers, and positive triggers, right? We're going to talk about both at some point. But for me, I just wanted to bring some type of understanding that we all have gone through life, no matter where we were born, the culture we were raised in, the dynamics of the culture within the culture, meaning the culture within your home, your house. What type of thing was going on in your home? Was it single parent? Was it domestic violence in there? Was it perpetration in there? Was it things that mental health issues in your home? The stuff that people don't know about you, that you were raised in and around, right? Although you were raised in a certain area, you were also had a family and were raised in a home. Some people were raised in group homes, right? Listen to that. I know people who family gave them up for adoption for whatever reason. I know people who family got caught up in the crack epidemic and the children were misplaced. I know people and young kids that were in crack dens with their parents while their mother was selling her, okay, to get another hit off the pipe. I know all of these things affect so many people. And if we don't address it or deal with it or find someone to help walk you through it, it doesn't disappear and it rolls over into our relationships. So we're going to talk a little bit about fight, flight, freeze, and the fawn response. And so I want you to understand, and then I'm going to come to some of the comments because I see you guys are lighting up the chat. Thank you for being here. And most people, you know me, I'm right here with you, whether I'm on my ministry trap channel or here. I love notes. I love to give concrete information. I love to talk about my experience because experience is the best teacher, right? I can't take you where I haven't been. I said, I can't take you where I haven't been, right? And so I speak from the cup of my life. I speak from the survival points of how I got through what I got through. So most people have level of awareness of PTSD, particularly as it applies to people returning from, we know, war zones in the Middle East. We know that PTSD was also evident in the soldiers returning. Oh, remember the Vietnam guys coming back home to us? You can remember that. But there was a limited recognition back in that time about other things that causes triggers and traumatic events brought on by severe trauma, right? Trauma in the earlier times of what someone is going through. At one point, they only talked about uh, PTSD regarding war and regarding things like that. But through study and through things progressing, today research, it talks about the brain, and it studies, certain things that they didn't have. This is science moving forward. And the most well-known thought about trauma and triggers is the fight, flight, or freeze responses. But however, there's a fourth possible response, the so-called fawn response. Flight includes running or fleeing the situation. That is flight. Fight is to become aggressive, and freeze is to literally become incapable of moving or making a choice. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been there? Now, the fawn response involves immediately moving to try to please a person. Listen, to try to please a person to avoid any conflict. It almost sounds like a people pleasing thing, right? This is often a response developed in childhood trauma, where a parent or a significant authority figure is the abuser. Children go into a fawn-like response to attempt to avoid the abuse, which may be verbal, physical, or sexual, by being a pleaser. A pleaser. In other words, they preemptively attempt to appease the abuser by agreeing, answering what they know the parent wants to hear, or by ignoring their personal feelings and desires, and do anything and everything to prevent the abuse. This is called the fawn response. So when you recognize the fawn response, we'll get into that. I want to talk more about that, but let's put this up for a second, and let's go to first let's just know. I want to go to the comments. Let's go to the comments, and I'm going to start from the top on greeting you guys and saying thank you for being here. We got the one and only Nania in the house. You know who she is, right? And we got my co-host and Dawn B on Thursday night on the Bravo with Sheila channel in the house. She's saying TGIF, Bravo Nation. Yes, she is. And she's greeting, everyone's greeting themselves. And Dawn is greeting and Nay is greeting Dawn. And then let me see. I'm reading as I go, right? I'm reading as I go. Dawn is saying, but you are here, Auntie Bravo. We hear you perfectly. I'm so glad. I am not in my studio. As you can tell, the background is a little different, right? It's a little different. I am in California, right? And I was explaining when we first came on that I couldn't, the dog was going crazy. The my little Ozzy over here. The men was picking up garbage. It was just a lot going on here. And I'm not in my particular space, so I had to adjust myself. My body is still on New York time or East Coast time, but I am here. And that's what that comment meant. And we got Arshawn, one of my favorite people in the house. Arshawn is in the house. How are you doing? I'm so glad to see you. I am so glad to see you, Arshawn. Thank you for being here. Oh, yeah, it was a great stream. Lady Dawn did it. I tell you, in real time, when things happen, you got to just pull it out, get in the square, and do what you got to do. For some reason, her guest didn't show up, right? That she will be back on. And Lady Dawn had to do her thing. And boy, did she do it. You need to go back and watch that live. And Sean is saying, good morning to everyone. And Dawn is thanking him. And then Renee has a comment. Let's see what she's saying. She is saying, hold on now. She's saying, I try to recognize that my feelings are based on that trigger and not necessarily that person or event. That helps remind me to self-assess. And that is excellent. That is excellent. You have to divert the thought and try to move it to something else, depending on what the trigger is and what the dynamic of trauma that has happened to you. Some people are able to do that, and some people need a little bit more help, but that is good. We got Superfood Parent in the house. This is another one of my favorite people here. I think I'm going to play one of her little commercials in a little while. That's good that the hospital staff protected you in the ways they could. Yes, yes. Yes, Superfood. Let me park a little bit there. The hospital staff had strict orders from my mother that no one was to tell me that my husband was murdered. When I kept looking for him to come back, after I woke up in the recovery room, I know where I was. Wayne was. I knew if something happened to Sheila, Wayne was there. So it was when you saw Wayne, you saw Sheila. We were like white on rice, as they say back in the day. And for some reason, when I woke up, I realized it felt like I had slept an entire day. Because remember, I had an emergency C-section. So my body, I was a young girl, and the nurses understood, the nurses station understood not to tell me anything. My mother said, I will get there and I will tell her. But it just so happened that my dad showed up. Yes, he did. My dad showed up. And once he said, I'm her dad, they let him in. And he is the one who spilled the beans. He is the one who came and told me that Wayne was murdered. And I just went off. I went crazy. They had to roll me to the nurse's station so I could call my mother. My mother was livid that my dad actually came in and shared that with me. He was, I'll say, a little bit intoxicated, if you know what I mean. Alcohol was his mistress. So he was a little high, Excuse me. I'm sorry for the bottle, but I didn't get a glass. I'm sorry. hmm He had a couple. And so he decided to tell me, and it wasn't a good thing. My mother was very upset. He went out the side door. She didn't see him. So the hospital staff, Superfood Parents, Laquita, they took care of me so well. And I know that means a lot to you, because whether you guys know it or not, we have a nurse in the midst of us, a nurse and a chef, Superfood Parents. Amen. And so Superfood Parents is saying here, she's also saying, because I'm not reading them, this is an emotional trigger for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see what Arshawn says. Arshawn is saying that it's difficult to let people into those feelings sometimes. Also hard to know how to sit with someone grieving. Yep, for sure. Absolutely. That is so on point. That is so on point. So on point. And Dawn B, my co-host, Lauren Lady Dawn is saying it's important that we acknowledge those areas and moments and determine how to process and express what we are feeling due to those triggers. Yeah, yeah, because they have the power, they have the triggers, I'll say, have a personality of their own to try to take over our mind. I'm sorry, I got oil. I anointed myself this morning. I forgot to. Sorry. I just noticed that. Why you guys didn't tell me I was shining? Dawn says that she is saying it is a really good talk today. Amen. Thank you so much, my dear Dawn. And then Sean is saying we are all going. Yes, we are all going to that place called there. So true. And he says private pain. I think he mentioned that comment when I was talking about the same day that my husband was murdered, the day my daughter was born, and how I celebrate her. I don't even talk about him. I don't put, in memory of Wayne up on my Facebook page. I don't put in memory of my husband. I don't do anything like that because I don't want my daughter to see it. I want her to feel joyful on that day. So I celebrate her and I minimize me. And yes, it is a private type of pain, Sean, that I go through on that day every year on January 13th. I master it. I sit with myself and I speak to myself and I remember him. And I just, when Wayne died, when Wayne was murdered, I don't want to say died, he was murdered. After that, for years, if I watched TV and saw a gunshot or a gun fired, if I heard a firecracker, if I heard whatever, it would come back up. It would rise back up. I'm much better with it now. But these things happen, and I just want us to learn how to work with it more, opposed to it affecting us and it controlling our emotions, our mental, and our physical as well. And again, those of you who just joined in, this was something I wanted to talk about based on how I got triggered last week while I was in a car, and a van came sideways to cross over us. We happened to stop, but a biker was coming, and the biker couldn't stop, ran into the van, flew up in the air, hit the ground, and I was triggered immensely. I was triggered because I remembered the day that I was walking across the street and that car ran the light and crushed my leg. Just messed me up. My tibia totally crushed. I mean, they did an incredible job in putting my tibia and my leg back together, but I still have pain and suffering. Here I am. As I sit, my leg is swollen right now. My knee, 3 surgeries later, had to get a total knee replacement. Been in a wheelchair, been on crutches, been on a cane. I am walking, hallelujah, without any of those things now, but I am still suffering, pain and suffering from someone's carelessness and of hitting me and not even apologizing, watching me screaming on the ground. So triggers, 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 right? And so, those of you who just joined in, that was the premise of why I started talking about this. I want to read this also, and then we're going to look at something on the screen. Um, Sean is saying we're all affected differently by the same events. Some of us are triggered and some of us are unaffected. So true. Oh, that is superfood parents saying that. We're all affected differently by same events. So true. Some of us are triggered and some of us are unaffected. That is true. That is absolutely true. We got David Hunt in the house. You guys got to go to Superfood Parents channel and go ahead. Chef Laquita is cooking and doing her thing and teaching us how to eat healthy and make points and gather points up every day by eating fruits and vegetables every meal. Yes, go on over to Superfood Parents channel. Also, David Hunt, listen, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 6 a.m. I tried this morning, but listen, it was 3 a.m. here when I woke up. I missed it. So sorry, but I missed it. All right. David Hunt saying aloha and good morning. I love him and his music. Another favorite person of mine. Go ahead and go to his channel and do that. So let's get back to the conversation. Let's get back. Oh, wait a minute. I got to put one more comment up from Nurse Laquita. Let's put her comment up because we are talking a nurse. As a nurse, we have a group home for disabled children in our area. A lot of them have families, but they're in an institution. Whoa. Yeah, even the trauma and the events of children with parents who are incarcerated, right? Women who are incarcerated, men who are incarcerated. And you know that in this, as I always say, and David Hunt is echoing it, when nothing changes, nothing changes. That's right. And we have to do the work. We have to do the work. We have to do the work. And Dawn is saying, I'm going to follow you, Auntie Bravo, Auntie Sheila. I'm following your lead, Auntie. Amen and amen. All right, so let's tie this up. We got Lady Navoa in the house. Thanks for being here, Lady Navoa. Thank you guys for all being here. This has been wonderful, wonderful chat. Um, the biker, Lady Navoa is asking me about the biker. Was the bike okay? No, I'm okay. Sorry. Listen, the biker, I went back, we turned the car around and went back to the biker. He couldn't speak really good English. I was giving him information in case he needed us as witnesses, because again, when that got hit by that car and that young lady stood next to me and made sure that the cops did the right thing, the ambulance handled me well. She was like, she says, my daughter, I said, my daughter's name is Nicole. She said, well, I'm not leaving you until you are good. That girl, even to this day, she texts or she checked on me to see how I was doing, to see what was going on with me. God will always have someone there to help you in a time of crisis if people would just have the compassion sometimes to deny themselves in a moment like that. Like I did for the biker. We went back. I stopped and talked with him, asked him if he wanted me to call the cops, asked him did he want to go to the hospital, but it was that language barrier. So, I felt really that I did the best I could for him that day. And I just was upset that his bike was totaled and the person that ran into him was parked right in the block. When I saw the person, wisdom told me, don't confront the guy. Just go back and tell the biker and his friend, you need to go get his information. Don't let him get away with this, right? He has insurance. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I said, but your bike is total. Now you can't work, because I could see he was delivering food or something. And I just felt really bad for him. But that's what triggered this conversation. And then it triggered me to think, how many events have I experienced that were major traumatic experience? And then I began to read to you about PTSD, how back in the day it was only attributed to people who had war experience. But listen, what happened at 9/11 and so many different things. So let's just look at this, and I want you to see what you can relate to on here. So how many emotional triggers are there? There's so many, and of course there's not enough space and time for us to talk about it today. There are countless emotional triggers that can impact our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. However, there are some common ones worth exploring. Common triggers are fear, anger, joy. How emotional triggers work. I'm sorry to say, I thought I made this larger. There are countless emotional triggers, including fear, anger, joy, sadness, surprise, disgust, envy, and more. Identify yours, and it'll better help you to manage fear of missing out, feelings of being undervalued, fear of change, or the unknown. These examples of some emotional triggers. The impact of emotional triggers, there are numerous. When I say numerous, that's why I said we're going to continue to talk about this whole trigger series that we're going to be doing, including fear, anger, sadness, joy, envy, guilt, and shame. Identifying them can help manage emotions. There are many, many pleasures. Listen, emotional triggers, including pleasure, guilt, curiosity, and many more. Understanding them can help you connect with so many, with your audience, with yourself, and just help you to get to a place called there. And so I just wanted to show that quick slide and share with you about flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. Yes. And so I want to know, are you dealing with some triggers? Are you dealing with triggers? Now, I said I know many of us know about the flight, fight, and fear, but let's talk a little bit about the fawn, recognizing a fawn response. Let's start there. As the fawn response is developed in early childhood, it can become difficult for an individual to recognize it's occurring, right? However, there are keys that give us clues. You look to others for how you feel in a relationship or situation. I'm giving you bullets. It is difficult to identify your feelings even when you are alone. You often feel like you have no identity. You are constantly trying to please the people in your life. People pleasers, right? You ignore your own beliefs, your thoughts and truths, and accept those of the people around you. Mhm. You may experience unusual emotional responses when issues do not involve people of importance in your life. Like this could include emotional outbursts at strangers of sudden sadness throughout the day. Many people struggle with this. Saying no to those around you is a challenge. I tell you all the time, no is a sentence. No is a sentence, right? Saying no can save you from so much pain and heartache. You are overwhelmed at times, but take no more if asked. You are overwhelmed at times, but take on more. I'm sorry if you're asked. You're overwhelmed. You're up to here, but you keep piling it on. You keep piling it on. These things are included and caused and called fawn response and fawn triggers. You are uncomfortable or threatened when asked to give an opinion. The fawn response is often not discussed in PTSD, as it may be seen as simply a part of a personality of an individual, but somehow they have included this now and caused it to be part of a PT because it's a trigger, right? However, it goes beyond, and it's being talked about and discussed. And so individuals with the fawn response pattern can be targeted by those who are narcissistic or those with the desire to control and manipulate people around them. Let me tell you, these trigger points show up in so many different colors, right? And Miss Trigger will show up, Mr. Trigger will show up in certain ways, and it'll cause you to not even be able to identify the very thing that is going on in you. In this situation, the fawn response creates listen to me, a dangerous cycle with the narcissist demanding more and more, and the individual, listen, with PTSD feeling greater levels of anger, guilt, and self reproach for giving that emotional and physical all to the partner. Stop, pause, and reflect. Stop, pause, and reflect. Did you hear me? In this situation, the fawn, and I've given you the bullets on it, response creates a dangerous cycle with the narcissist demanding, because we're going to talk about triggers and the narcissistic behavior as well as we continue this series. The fawn response creates a dangerous cycle with the narcissist demanding more and more, and the individual with PTSD triggers, right? These situations, right? Feeling greater levels. Now, the person on the other end is getting angry. This is the response of the person who's triggering this event, is triggering this. It triggers greater levels of anger and guilt and self-reproach, getting angry with themselves. Now, this thing turns on you, right? It turns on you for giving their emotional and physical all to the partner, for giving your power up, for giving up what you had a right to say. What? The sentence? No, you had the right, and you just minimized yourself, right? Because of what you're going through on the inside. I tell you, you got to identify it to crucify it. We have to identify the things that try to speak to our emotions and speak up here, because we know this is the devil's playground. If he gets up here and you think on it too long, think on a sad thought too long, and don't dispute it with a happy thought, it's going to get down in your emotions. And what happens? The behavior follows, right? We think, right? And when we allow something to stay up here too long, it'll travel down to our emotions, right? And then what happens? Our behavior follows. It's same way. If it's something wonderful and positive and funny, a joke you might have heard, you think on that joke long enough. You think on it long enough, the response is the joke, the information is going to travel. And what's going to happen? Your behavior will respond with laughter. So it's the same thing. The power that we have and have to take control of this mind of ours and do the work so that we can move forward and get to a place called there. Get to a place called there. I'm telling you, I am so happy that we did this today. I'm happy that I was able to share with you and talk with you about this, because I think that it's very, very important to talk about this. Let me give you a couple of more things that I want to talk about, and then we're going to leave for today. And so, if your body perceives itself to be in trouble, your system will work to keep you alive. Okay, stop, pause, and reflect. If your body perceives itself to be in trouble, your system, you are a system. There's a system built inside of you. Don't think that there's not a system. You're powerful. You're wonderful. You were built to live, built to succeed, built to rise above trauma, you built for it. We just have to work at it and deal with what has been taught. Listen, you got to play the hand that you was dealt. Listen, I say it all the time. I had to play the hand I was dealt. I had to sink or swim. I chose to swim. Now that stroke, getting back up, was not easy. I was stroking. I was stroking, trying to get back up. And the same time I was stroking, another trauma hit and tried to cause me to sink again. And I just had that system on the inside caused me to push and push and push. Like when you think about the salmon, everybody know I love salmon. Salmon, when I'm going to talk about that and include that, because the salmon will always return back to the very water that it came from. And the way that a salmon survives in water, going upstream. We're going to talk about that one day. I love to talk about that just because I eat a lot of salmon. But if you understand the mechanism of a salmon and the resilience and the persistence of a salmon, we got to be like the salmon and swim upstream. We got to go upstream. So if your body perceives, I'm going to hammer this in you, itself to be in trouble, your system will work to keep you alive. That's when fight, flight, and freeze, and fawn are a broader collection of natural bodily reactions to stressful, frightening, or dangerous events. There is a system inside of us all. There is a system. There's one that I'm not going to really get into now. There is one that's called FLOP, FLOP, FLOP trauma. FLOP trauma response is a person becomes physically and emotionally unresponsive, like a dead dog. Like you just, here we go, flop. That happens. Flop. Where someone plays dead when they feel threatened. You ever seen a dog or somebody, or you have to play dead? Listen, that has happened with many times in a bad situation where there's some type of unruly violence going on, and the person has to think quick, and they lay there and they like, okay, I can't move. They flop because they're threatened. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about concerning triggers. There's so much. Oh my goodness. And so we're going to wrap this up, because I could talk about childhood traumas and triggers, possums. Yeah. What are the 6 stages of trauma responses? I already told you about that, but there's a couple that I didn't talk about. We talked about freeze, flight, fight, fright, flag, and faint. We didn't go through that, right? There's so much to talk about. There's so much to share, understanding what it is and how do we get to a place called there. How do we get to a place called there? So I just think that this is something that I needed to share with you. My own personal experience triggered the conversation. And then I said, does everybody have triggers? Do we all deal with that? And I read to you that 70% of Americans have experienced at least one traumatic experience. And sometimes in life, they try to keep coming up and coming up and coming up. And for me, it happened to me last week, remembering when I got hit by a reckless car driver, driving a car, and had no compassion. And so the trigger on top of the trigger was that this fool stood there looking at me on the ground and would not even say, "I'm sorry, miss, I hit you." He tried to tell me it was my fault, and the whole crowd was ready to shred him to pieces because they were standing. People were in the area and saw that I was the only one crossing the street, and he ran the light. And he was a coward. He never apologized to me. I found out where he lived. I found out his number. I found out everything. Sure did. And everything inside of me, when I say everything inside of me, wanted to show up at his doorstep, wanted to say some things to him, wanted to everything inside of me wanted to get back at him, just to say, "You're a coward. You hit me. You changed my life. My legs are not the same." One of my legs, and I have to say, yeah, Detective Me, that's right. I tell you, I was born and raised in Harlem. Listen, some of those things, you learn street stuff, you don't forget it. right? It assists you in the kingdom. My street knowledge assists me in the kingdom. That's right. I wanted to tell him a couple of things, I tell you, but I didn't. But I did write an article in one of the community newspapers because I knew that I was not the only person who this had happened to. So I wrote an article. It was published in the newspaper and talking about hit and runs and hit. And so my gratitude as I was, healing after that traumatic experience, uh, I was afraid I would not be able to walk again. I was afraid. I was afraid. I had something what you call what do you call it? Superfood. Lakrita knows about this. If I'm saying it correct, no weight bearing. I could not put my foot down for months and months because of the injury being so severe. I could not put my foot, so I was either on crutches or in a wheelchair for a long, long time. I was moved from the hospital to rehabilitation for months. It was a very bad injury. And I had excessive therapy. I was in therapy and other people was coming in who had knee replacements and this, that, and the other, and they were leaving, they were getting healed. And they had to remind me, Sheila, you got hit by a car. This is not a little injury. You got to work a little harder. And I remember that first time they tried to put me on the bike to go around. My brain, my mind, I would not turn. I would not put my feet. I could not. It's amazing how the brain will lock you down. I was so afraid that if I pedaled around the bike, my leg was going to crack. My leg was going to break. And no matter how they tried to talk to me and convince me that it was not going to break, I would not move around the bike. So I became the conversation piece in the whole therapy place. I was in therapy 3 times a week. And it got to the point where they said, you have to get on this bike. I said, no, I can't. My leg's going to break. No, no, no. So one day, I said, I'm going to do the bike. Every time I said I'm going to do the bike, I would get on and I'd be like, no, 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 take me off, take me off. So I would get off. This particular day, I got on the bike and I said, I have to fight this. I have to fight this. Push. I have to push past my fear and trust these people around me that my leg is not going to break. And when I just said, okay, 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 okay. And I went around. I said, I did it. I mean, it was a big thing for me. Everybody cheered me on, and people that was there that didn't know me, they knew I had a fear. I'm telling you, these triggers and the trauma and the effects that it has on you. And then that's how I began to really be able to move around the bike, and I began to move more. My range of motion was crap. They was the bend, and oh man, what pain I went through by a reckless driver. So when that event happened and I saw that boy get hit and he flew up in the air, and I mean, it just was a trigger for me. And so here I am today. My leg right now is talking. My leg right now is swollen. My leg right now is not feeling great, but I don't focus on it. I push past it and I try to do whatever I can do. Now, I've been a little lazy because I did start water aerobics and that was helping me. And then I slacked up again. I tell you, I got to get back in the water and help myself. So you need to help yourself and whatever you need to do to get better and what you need to do. Let's see what this comment says, and then we're going to wrap it up. This comment says, yep, I've seen people flop, but more from them playing foolish, just waiting for others to handle things. Oh my goodness, that's a good one. That's a good one, Laquita. That is a good one. Let's see. She has another comment here, and I'm going to play something in a minute. Your hit and run experience really shows how we are on our own solution. Yes, yes, yes. How we are our own solution. Absolutely. I tell you, it has been a time healing, and it has been a time. And then, the triggers, I tell you, then I started thinking about the trigger when my husband was murdered. Come on, I was married 4 months, young girl, now a widow with 2 little girls. A widow with 2 little girls. I wasn't even 20. So then think about it. I had now getting ready to live a life of a woman 30 or 40, and my husband is gone. So then what happens after that? Oh, God, you got to read the book. So much happened after that. So much happened after that. But I'm still standing. I'm still here, right? So I know what happens when life happens and when it offsets and tries to, take you out mentally and physically. I know what that's like. I do. I do. I know what it's like. And I just praise God for allowing me to be here today. And I thank God for being here with you. And I'm praying that you will work on things that you need to work on, that you will understand that when nothing changes, right? So, what do you have to do? You have to keep it moving. You have to keep it moving. No matter what, you have to keep moving. No matter what, keep it moving. Know that when nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I want to show you something before we leave here. I want to share something with you, and I want you to check it out, and I want you to support. First, I want to do this. Let's do this. Thank you. Thank you. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I'm looking for something. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hey. I can't find what I'm looking for. Well, I guess I have to show it the next time. It's buried somewhere. Can you do this for me? Yeah. I had a commercial I wanted to play. I don't know where it is. It's hiding. It's hiding. It's hiding. I'm going to have to put my hand on it and show it another time. But anyway, I am so happy that you guys are here. And I don't know if this is the commercial, but I don't want to play something that I shouldn't be playing. I don't know if this is it, but I wanted to play my superfood uh, parent commercial. I can't find it. It's in here somewhere, Laquita. I'll make sure I label it, and the next time I will play it. I have played it before, but I don't see it. I don't see it. So listen. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Hey, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Now I'm going to try to I'm really, really, really going to try to get back on here. Although this LA time, I'm not in LA, I'm in California. Well, same difference, right? This morning I tried to get on with David Hunt. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still kind of jet lagged. So listen, I'm doing my best. So I'm going to try to get back on the ministry channel and try to get back on Tuesday, and then we'll just continue to do what we do. So I love you so much. I really, really love you, love you, love you. And thank you for being on and being patient with me, changing the times this morning. Ozzy is kind of quiet. I'm shocked. He's taking a nap over there. And so I'm going to do some things. I'm going to do some work while I'm here. And just think about coming back on to hang out with you guys. I mean, I had a really, really good time. Let's see what some of the comments is saying. Oh, we have wonderful the sayest. How do I say it? I don't want to mess this name. It's beautiful. Thank you for being here. Get my rest, right? I need to rest and stop being a workaholic. Get my rest and enjoy California. Let me put this up. Let me read it so I could take it in, take it all in. Get your rest and enjoy California. Get your rest, Sheila. I don't know how to rest. I have to learn how to just stop, pause, and reflect a little bit more. Oh, okay. We got a little movement going on with the dancing. Hey, there we go. There we go. There we go. All right. Lady Navoa says, what is she saying? Let's see what Lady Navoa is saying. That's Mrs. Shisha. Oh, that's her. Oh, okay, Miss Shisha. She said, hi. Okay, okay. Now I know that name. Now I know that name. Thank you. Thank you. I love her too. I love her and her husband and her family. Yeah. Yep. 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 So this was good today, guys. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experiences. You are so appreciated. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That touches my heart. It really does. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm pressing. I'm pressing. We got to stay in the press, guys. We have to stay in the press, right? So let's stay in the press together. How about that? We just all going to stay in the press together. How about that? Let's not leave nobody behind. No one left behind. We're not going to leave anybody left behind. We're just going to continue to stay in the press as we groove on out of here. Hey, ciao. Ciao, guys. See you soon.